Hey guys, if you're out there wedding planning, now is the time to pay attention. I want you guys to know that there are a lot of questions that should be asked to wedding photographers in general, but one of the biggest questions we get is why is wedding photography pricing such a mystery? Well, in this episode, I'm going to help demystify this. Hey guys, Amy Rigetti here, your South Asian wedding guru, and I want to be able to talk to you guys a little bit about photography pricing and what it is exactly that you guys are paying for. Clients often come in and they say, Amy, I am going to have a 2-day Indian wedding and I really need to get pricing for about 15 hours of events. And I tell myself, well, do you know what event you're having? And they're like, I don't really know. My mom hasn't really figured out. She's still working with the priest. And I really wanted to figure out like just rough pricing for photography so we know what to expect and so forth. Well, my first question is always, to let people know that we do not do videography, that we can offer great referrals to people all around the globe that we've worked with, but it's something that we do not offer as we specialize only in photography. That's the one thing that I want clients to realize before they start reaching out to anybody, because it's one of those things that you need to know before you actually give people your contact information. I'm not here to sell anybody on what they should do, but I definitely want to know that when they reach me or come to me that they've put a little bit of thought into, do I want a photo and video team? If that's not a priority to me, then I really want to be focused on photography and booking a photographer that I love. And then that video cinema aspect of it will fall into place. Some of our clients at the time that they reach out don't even know if they want cinema or not, or they're just looking for cinema to cover like highlights. So it's really a good idea to get into what it is that you're hoping to get from both of your teams so that you can prioritize what it is that you want from a photo or video team or both. That's my first and foremost question to our clients when they reach out. And then my next question often is, can you walk me through a little bit if budget was not of a concern and you wanted to have your day capture? What does that look like? Does that start with your Haldi and then go through a Mendi? What does it really entail being covered? Because some clients will first start out and they'll say, oh, well, I just want the Sangeet and the wedding and reception covered. And then later on, their parents are like, no, we have like this puja at home. We're having the Haldi at home. And then we are having both Haldi for both boy and girl at the same time. And they want them done. And so this is very good to know because I need to know how many people are going to be present at that. Do I need multiple shooters for his Haldi? Do I need multiple shooters for her Haldi? Because that means that I'll be at one, Srinu will be at one. And if they're larger, then we bring in associate shooters to shoot alongside of us. So we make sure that we're not missing anything. One of the best parts about our services, I feel, which I haven't seen a lot of people offer, is that if we know that your event is going to have X amount of people, or we know that we have to divide and conquer, if we feel that the crowd is going to be bigger, then we usually bring in associates under our own understanding that we need this to capture your wedding the way that it should be captured. And so we don't charge extra for additional shooters if we feel that they are warranted. Now, we do get clients that are like, no, I would definitely just feel comfortable having 3, 4, 5 shooters, and that's fine, but we do bill for those additional shooters. But the whole peace of mind of knowing that if we feel we need more to accomplish fulfilling our job, we're going to bring them and we're not going to bill for them is something that clients are like, I love that about the Rigettis. So I find that as we work into photography pricing, we need to know these details because these are a huge part of how we're going to break down our particular pricing. There is a difference between hourly pricing and package pricing. We had started very early on and thought we were going to throw packages out there. It made it easier, include all these different things in there. But what we learned over all the years of doing that is our clients just don't have time to make selections and fill packages. And, if you're offering this or that, they can't make image selections. They're just torn. There's too many people involved in the process making that it hinders the process of delivering things on time. So we have learned that from our photography standpoint, we specifically no longer offer packaging. There is no sense in going like platinum, bronze, a 10-hour, 12-hour, 14, 16, 18-hour, because none of these ever hit the same client twice. So what we did is we started doing an hourly coverage. And I can tell you, to be safe, your average wedding photographer for a South Indian wedding in the United States, even though some people will say, well, it's going to vary region to region, I can tell you safely you're going to be investing a minimum of $5,000 just for wedding day coverage day of, who, no matter who you reach out to, if they have any kind of experience on Indian weddings, you're looking at a starting of $5,000. And then as you hit more seasoned, experienced photographers, you will start to creep up from there. So the way that we do our pricing is we do it hourly. We know the nature of the beast when it comes to photographing, especially Indian weddings. And so there are certain things that we just know are expected, like downtime between the wedding and the reception. There's time where our couples are going to be changing. That's non-billable for us. We always tell our clients that while we're pricing this out and we're packaging this whole number of hours and what it is that you want coverage of and albums, we're really keeping into mind what is it that needs to be covered. And then we present our client with a proposal. And so it's very hard for us to be able to provide a proposal to a client without them looking at a number if they don't step on a Zoom with us. As photographers, we go back and forth all the time. Should we require a Zoom before we give pricing? This is an ongoing thing within the photography, videography market in general, as to give pricing or not, because everybody's always trying to negotiate. One thing that we don't do is negotiate. So we have a set pricing for what we do. So if somebody comes up to me and says, Amy, I need 8 hours, I'm going to do 8 hours on 2 separate days, I know what that pricing is going to be. It's not going to change from one best friend to the next. It's consistent all the way through. For us, it's about the project. It's about what it is to create your perfect wedding day, cover your day the way that you want it to without blowing your budget, of course. And these are things that if clients are transparent from the very, very beginning, that we as vendors can work with our clients to make sure that if we're the right fit, we're going to give them exactly what they need. So as you move in and you ask for these inquiries to get pricing, be as transparent as you can be. You want an honest vendor anyway. And if they're going to change things because of what they think you're doing on your wedding day or your venue, they're not the right vendor for you anyway. But just be upfront, be transparent. If you've seen a lot of similar work on their website, you know that they've dealt with this client a lot. There's nothing that a good vendor is going to do except for give you honest, trustworthy information. I feel like I'm that way with all my clients. I tend to lose some probably because I'm too honest. And, there's certain things I just have morals and values on. There's certain people also that I just don't enjoy working with because I know the outcome. And I've had certain clients that have already booked certain people and I'm like, oh, I just already know what their day is going to be like. So for us, we have certain situations where we will give out incentives if you book particular coordinators or if you're working with a particular coordinator or venue, because I already know what kind of wedding day you're most likely going to have in terms of flow of events, ease of shooting. Am I going to get the time that I need? Is this going to be a great wedding for us to add to our online portfolio for other clients just like you to find us so we can keep booking great clients? These are some of the things that if you just take them into consideration, you're transparent right up front, these are things that are going to save you in costs on the wedding day. I've said it before and I'll say it again, that if you have a really great team that you've started to put together, even if you reach out to a wedding coordinator and you've already stacked your team, if that coordinator sees the team members that you've stacked and they're like, they've picked some really good vendors, that coordinator is going to be on it because they really want to work with that team as well. So it's a win-win for everybody if you just really think out how it is that you want your vendors to present themselves. One thing that I've seen with a lot of photo video teams is they just come, and I think that there's just this mentality that we're artists. And so some people will just show up in like jeans and a shirt. And I'm like, we're at a wedding. Like this is kind of an evening affair. And, I can understand if you're doing if you're doing a sangeet or a haldi or something like that, if you want to wear something a little bit more professional but casual, that's fine. But there's no reason for your vendors not to show up to your wedding day dressed professionally in a way that signals to people they're my event professionals, and it commands a certain amount of respect. So these are all things that I feel if you really think about them and you put the time into your vendors, you'll find that they will save you on your cost on the wedding day, because people, if you are transparent with your vendors, they will be able to tell you and just reinforce what it is that you've been doing. If you hired already some vendors, they can say, oh my gosh, they're like really amazing. I love working with them. Often enough, if you pick somebody they're not crazy about, they just won't say anything. But these are things that they can give you a heads up on. Sometimes I feel guilty, even saying things, but then I'm just torn because I feel like if you're telling me, yeah, these are the people that we're considering, I feel like sometimes if I don't speak up about like a decorator or, a DJ that we've worked with, it's just been a horrible experience. I feel like I am indirectly contributing to the downfall of your day. So I am brutally honest in the sense of like, gosh, please don't ask me if you don't want to hear the truth, because I'm going to share it with you, whether you like it or not, because I feel you deserve to know. So that's just part of I don't know if that's a character flaw or not. Tell me in the comments if you think that's a character flaw or not. I'll work on it. So just always remember, guys, that it's very important that you remember that if you've talked to any of your past friends or family, you'll commonly hear one of the common things that they'll say when it's relating to photography is, I won't remember what my food tasted like. I won't remember what this was, but I'll cherish every single picture that I have and I'll look at them for years to come. That's what you really need to keep in mind as you're booking your wedding photographer and you're thinking, okay, this is probably one of my largest spends on one particular vendor. It's important. And we know that it's important because every day when we talk to different brides and different clients and grooms and their parents, we are constantly being told about the things that matter most to them, which they've really thought about when it comes to their aspect of photography. And this is one thing that after the wedding day, you just can't simply have redone. And you don't want this to be your biggest regret. So make sure you're looking out there. Don't get caught up on the trends and what you're seeing on somebody's social media, because half the time they're posting one or two great pictures that they're capturing of 1 to 100 events. And you really need to make sure that you're looking at the scope of like each project. That's what we're seeing more fading off when it comes to photography websites. People are giving a portfolio, but they're not giving weddings anymore. They're just giving all their favorite pictures because they have this aesthetic that they want to meet and they're trying to sell a certain look. And you're not going to get that at every single wedding. So they're picking like the best of the best in which they got that aesthetic and they're selling it. So you have to be able to see through some of that because it's so easy to get excited about your wedding and overlook the important things and then later look back on it and say, how did I miss that? It was like right there and I missed it. So it's just something that you want to make sure that you're thinking about. A lot of times clients also don't realize that when they're hiring their wedding photographer, you are investing in somebody's 40 to 60 hour work week, depending on how many days of coverage, how long each day is, and what it is in terms of editing for your pictures and all that stuff. They're investing in that. If they're doing site visits and so forth, there's a lot of investment even from your event professional side. So these are things that people don't consider when you start looking at pricing for wedding photography. There are little things that you want to take into note. Yes, we all do and can provide an hourly rate for services. And sometimes when people look at the hourly rate, they can be like, oh my gosh, that's like so high. When in actuality, that hourly rate is not really truly an hourly rate because it's a culmination of like 60 hours broke down. So when you look at it from that standpoint, it's not just a 14-hour day that we covered. So that hourly rate can be overwhelming. That's why when we give our clients coverage, even though we are hourly, we tend to say, okay, well, here's 14 hours. Here's the total. Here's the album. Here's the tax. Photography specifically has to be taxed in the state of Virginia. So if you are someone having an event in Virginia, you are sales taxed no matter what. You can't get away from it because your photographer sells tangible products such as albums and folios and stuff like that, or you buy a thumb drive from them or whatever. Like, it's been a long time since I sent a thumb drive, but I do send hard drives out for clients who just want their images on hard drive. They don't plan on backing them up anywhere else, even though I do not encourage them not to back their images up on cloud. It's one of those things where I tell people, these are all the things that add into the cost of photography that you just don't simply think about because you don't see it in the beginning, but it adds up over time. And so when you're looking at that hourly rate for photography, break it down, minimum 40-hour work week. So take the hourly and, figure that out instead of looking at it like, oh, my wedding's only 14 hours. Divide that between 40 hours instead of 14, and you'll get the true cost on that. But when you're looking at it, make sure that photographers are being transparent. I always, before I even go to contract, I tell our clients, let's get on that Zoom. Let's make sure that we mesh first. And then if we mesh, like if I meet with a client and I'm like, this is my client, I would be lost if they didn't book me. Like I felt like I vibed so well. I would be the perfect one to capture their day. There's just more that I'm willing to do to incentivize that client to stay with me because I feel like they took the time to meet with me and didn't just ask me for a price quote. They were genuinely wanting to meet me because they were really considering me and Srinu covering their day. So I say, okay, I have to give that to them. Like they took the time to give me the time to let me get to know them. And then after that particular Zoom call, I send them a proposal or an updated proposal. And I say, hey guys, here's a booking incentive. I really want you guys to think and consider that we were a great match, that we had great chemistry. Please keep me in the loop as far as like what your process is and where you are in the process. I'd love to hear back, would love to be part of your wedding day. And that's to me, when you have that connection, it's done. Like you need not look any further because the connection was established. And if you feel it and I feel it, then, there is something to be said about going with your gut on that. So that's one of the big takeaways from this. Just go with your gut. There's just something to be said. If you get on that Zoom, your brain and your heart will tell you through body language, through conversation, if it flowed naturally, if you felt like they had what it takes to really be able to bring the best out of you guys in order to help you guys work through the flow of your pictures, no matter what it is that you want. Nobody can hide in the bushes and take your pictures. You're gonna know that we're there. So make sure that you can love and get along with us. Photography is one of the longest lasting vendors with you from your wedding experience. Outside of your coordinator, if you hire a coordinator for full planning and hire them right from the beginning, they're going to be one of the longest with you as well. So you have to really love both of them, to be honest. And we would want to make sure that you really thought that through. And that comes from just transparency, us providing that proposal, being able to be on that Zoom with you and saying, hey, we'd love to have your business. I'd love if you would give me your business, and to make sure that we capture your day in the way that it deserves to be captured. Another thing that you're not taking into consideration when you're thinking about the cost of photography is the equipment that people have invested in. I've gone to weddings where I see videographers show up and they have one backpack and they've got like a camera body, a backup camera body, and they have lenses that they're switching between their cameras and constantly switching. And when you have to switch lenses on a camera to capture things, you miss things. And so it's very important that your photography team has their gear and they're together. You know what I mean? They cannot be switching lenses in between very important moments. They have to be ready, gear on, and shooting that as it happens. Often enough during our receptions, we will usually, after all the main events happen, we will transition over to a wide lens, and then we will shoot with that for some time, and then we'll swap out some lenses while on the dance floor just to give a different perspective on the dance floor. And it just allows us to be a little bit lighter. But throughout the wedding day, getting ready and stuff like that, we're always double geared on each side just to make sure we're not switching lenses. And a lot of times people don't realize it, but Srinu is probably more of our Zoom shooter, whereas I'm a fixed lens and I like to shoot my cameras in a way that I'm not zooming. I zoom with my feet. So a lot of times people are like, you guys are so different. And I'm like, yeah, because I prefer to zoom with my feet and he zooms with his lens. So there's a lot of different ways that we as artists capture our particular moments. And this all comes from experience, what has worked for us, what we know we're going to need for that moment. And that's all part of the cost of wedding photography. So as you move into the booking process and you start getting proposals in, one thing you want to make sure that you avoid at all costs is lengthy packages and pricing. Photography is not difficult to price out, and you want to make sure that the process has become simplified. All you need to know is for the scope of the work that you need, what the cost is going to be. If you then feel that that cost is going to fit within your budget, there's where you can feel free to take a deeper dive into a proposal and take a deeper dive into possibly jumping on a call, Zoom preferably, so you can see and meet that person visually before moving any further. Once you get off that Zoom, that's the point where you really need to be able to see a contract. Our contracts typically will not only tend to answer a lot of questions, but it might also prompt a few as well. So I encourage clients after our Zoom, if they need to jump on another Zoom to discuss some of the particulars of the contract, to feel free to do that. Send me an email, text, whatever works for them, makes them comfortable. Your photographer throughout the whole process from starting to end should always be available to you. I get it that some days we're busier than others. I do get emails where clients will email me on a Thursday or Friday, and that's when that's like when my work week begins, because we are in between doing haldi's and pittis and like sangeets and garbas. So usually if you contact me on a Thursday, it's very difficult for me to get back to you until Monday. So I often tell people, just keep that in mind when you do book your photographer, because while I am there, if you need an email back from me, chances are if you email me on a Thursday, you're not going to hear from me till Monday. But if it's something that you just need a real quick answer, I tell them anytime, text me, because if I have a break at a wedding where we're sitting and eating lunch, or we're in between something, I can always text you right back. It's easier to do it that way. So we always make ourselves available to our clients so that we can answer questions, whether it's lighting, decor, because you're meeting with other vendors all the time. And sometimes there's just quick answers that are very important for you to have. So make sure that your photographer is going to be available to you as well. And when you look at your contract or your proposal that you've been provided, go through all those details. There's a lot of little stipulations that will be in there, especially with social media and sharing now. You want to make sure that you sign and understand what you're signing up for. And if you ever have a doubt, make sure that you always ask questions. I don't mind the questions. To be honest, I encourage them because I never want you later to feel like maybe you weren't informed or you missed something or didn't read something. So questions, they're welcome. And then last but not least, I want to make sure that you guys realize as you're going through this pricing situation, there are other things that you need to take into consideration, because a lot of people are not booking locals. They're booking people that are in other states and they're bringing them in. And sometimes that can be more affordable. It just depends on the area in which you're in. Some cities just demand higher pricing because of the logistics that go through. And some people just aren't familiar with those logistics. So they price one way. And then after they start shooting the wedding, all you have to hear is them moan and complain to all the other vendors about how they didn't price this wedding right, because they didn't know about parking. They didn't know about the logistics of the day, and you got to hear that. So sometimes when you're looking at certain cities and costs are more, it's because they're required to do more. Like certificate of insurance has to be higher. They don't necessarily talk about these things, and it's just left for you to speculate. So sometimes when you see a photographer that you really want, you look and you're like, man, they're so costly. It doesn't hurt to ask, like, if you could explain to me a little bit about your pricing, and then they'll go over these things with you and be super transparent if you ask them to. So that's another thing just to keep in mind as you are moving in on this process. So cost for photography. How I want to demystify this for you guys is just know that at the end of the day, photography is an hourly based business. Now they might offer it to you in a package and try to give you all this better value, but at the end of the day, there is an hourly, and you can always ask for that hourly cost. If you have a photographer who's just saying, okay, this is the job, and they seem like they're just willing to do everything and anything for you, I can promise you that somewhere along the line, you're not going to be happy, because their goal in that moment is simply just to get you to secure services with them, and they'll worry about all that they promised later. And I want to make sure that I let you guys know that, because the average lifespan of a wedding photographer is 2 to 5 years. So they usually get into business, everything's great, and then life starts happening, whether they meet someone, get married, have kids, whatever it is, and then things start to fizzle out. So by year 5, that's when you start hearing the horror stories about people who just aren't getting their images, because people are not good time management people. A lot of times when you find a good photo video team, it's because they have some background in business, they have some background in the art, and this is something that they're doing for a living because this is what they love. And so don't get caught up in all that. But remember that photography is an hourly based service, and that you can always break it down to that in order to make sure that you're comparing apples to apples from vendor to vendor. If people are trying to give away their services, there's a reason for it. Maybe they're not booking enough weddings. Maybe they're desperate. Maybe they've got a quota to meet. I don't know what it is, but make sure that you're asking the right questions to get the right answers, because at the end of the day, you can easily go up to any vendor, especially photography, and say, hey, I need coverage for this, this, and this. They can tell you what the average time for that coverage is with their average client, and they can give you a really good estimate of what those services are before you waste all your time talking, falling in love, and meeting with a photographer that you were never going to be able to afford. Some of the mistakes that people often make when booking their photographer also has to do with booking specifically on price. Just because they think it's a photographer, I'm going to book, this seems like a good price in booking. That's one of the top mistakes. The second mistake that they make is not having deliverables and all that actually broken down individually so that you know clearly what it is to expect. I belong to forums where there's lots of photographers, and photographers have told me horror stories about how a bride thought she was getting this and didn't get this, and it's nowhere in my emails and it's not in the contract, but she swears that I said this. And I tell everybody, make sure it's in writing, make sure that it's signed, make sure it's in a contract. That's the one way you know exactly what you're getting, and it should be broken down. We do ours line item by line item. We don't use any standard software that everybody else uses. Nothing is standard about what we do. Everything is a custom experience right down to our contracts. We've had many lawyers look over these, making sure that we haven't missed a beat. And it's important not only for us, but for you guys to know exactly what you're getting. Another mistake that people make is assuming that all photographers offer prints and albums. We're in a world now where not all photographers offer prints and albums. One, you have to go through a bit of a process in order to set up album printing with a company. And you also have to have a valid federal ID to be able to purchase some products from certain vendors. They want to make sure that you're a business because they simply don't sell to the consumer. And there are a lot of photographers out there who don't want to deal with all the end deliverables because this is a weekend warrior kind of job for them. So you want to be certain that if you're going to have to print from your own source, that you have all your high resolution files to be able to do so. And if you're going to have to make your own album and you're not comfortable with doing that, you need to make sure that you know that up front so that you can figure out, if you're going to use those services, what consumer grade albums are available for you to be able to display, preserve, and share your memories in. These are just a couple things that people don't think about as they get into the pricing details of booking their wedding photographer, that you really do need to ask these questions and consider these as you're moving along in this booking process and trying to figure out, what is it that I want to spend on photography? I always think it's funny how people drop these numbers. I don't even know where they get these numbers from, but they're like, oh, you spend an average of 10 to 15% on wedding photography. I don't know if that's true, because I have some weddings where they spend like $500,000 on their wedding. And I can promise you that they're not dropping 15% on wedding photography services. And I also have a bride who might be, spending $50,000 or $100,000, and she might be spending way more than that on her photography. So that information, I'm not really completely understanding like where these sites are getting this information. But as far as like, if you're coming directly to me as a vendor, some of it is completely inaccurate and untrue. It's almost like they just want to give an answer because they need to give an answer. But I don't know where these resources are finding this information, because that's not always true. Sometimes that percentage just depends on how much of a priority it is to you. So I'll leave you guys on this note. Photography is one of those things within your wedding that values over time. It grows in value and becomes more and more valuable to you over time. And not only you, but it becomes more valuable to generations that will supersede you, right? Your kids are going to look at these. Like even now, when my kids look at our wedding pictures, they tend to feel a certain way about who we were as their parents before we were their parents. Some of it, they're like, that's not you and mom and dad, or, oh my gosh, look how little you guys look, or how young you guys look. Like, oh my gosh, look at dad's hair. Like these are things that they value. And God forbid something happened to any of us, this is the way in which your story is going to be told moving forward. These albums are priceless. They're heirlooms. They are things to be held and enjoyed and treasured for years and decades and generations to come. And there's really no price that you can put on that. That really has to be a priority that you find is important from your heart. I'm seeing so many trends throughout the years. And even now, there's this trend for luxe photos. And I think this is just the hype as photographers. We try to put a spin to make ourselves unique, to be able to sell something. Strinu and I, we struggle all the time as to be true to exactly what we're doing or jump. And these are hard things for us as professionals because we always want to be meeting the market where it is. But one of the things we have promised never to do is to jump on trends. We have seen, if any of you have seen pictures in the past where they've done like spot coloring, where you got a picture in black and white and then the rose is in red. And you're like, that's so gross, so ugly. We never jumped on that bandwagon. We're starting to see now where pictures are muting their colors. And it's one thing if you have this outdoor beautiful garden wedding and the colors are more soft and subtle, but it's another thing if a bride is wearing an actual red sari and she has lots of beautiful colors in her wedding and you're just muting that down to meet a trend. We're unable to understand why people would do that, why you would have like an evergreen sari only to make it mint green. I don't understand it, but we are very big on making sure that our pictures are organic to nature. And when you're looking at your photographer, you need to make sure that you go through their portfolio, look at that, ask the right questions, and book the right one for you. Make sure that your personalities mesh. Make sure that you're looking at pictures and that's how you envision the aesthetic of your day 10 years from now. Are you still going to be happy with that? That's the question you need to ask yourselves. So guys, as you finish your planning journey, booking your vendors and trying to figure out just how much you want to spend on wedding photography, I hope I've given you some food for thought. If in any way I've helped you, please subscribe, like, share, follow me everywhere. This is how you're going to put me in the right pockets of the right people that I need to touch and give more information to. So until the next episode, happy wedding planning and go out there and kill it.